My name is. Oh, thank you. How about that? Oh, look at that. All right. It's for him, actually. All right. So for the live stream people as well, my name is Marcelo Bucater. I'm the drum department chair here at Los Angeles College of Music, LACM, and I'm super excited to introduce you this amazing drummer, musician, educator, and so on and so on. The list goes like. All right. I heard the sound check, and it's going to be something like incredible. All right. So without further ado, Mr. Thomas Lang.
Thank you. Hey, Marcelo, you're the man. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Marcelo, for having me. This was a nice side effect of our mutual friend Ramon Montagnier being here recently. I've got issues with my mic. So I'm going to just play a little bit for you guys. And then we have plenty of time and opportunity to talk. You know, feel free to ask anything. If you see me play anything that you go, "What is that?" You know, keep it in mind, and we can have a conversation a little later. So I'm going to just improvise a little bit. I'm going to try and work in some of my conceptual ideas, some applied independence and some applied technique stuff, and there we go. Enjoy. Thank you very much. Okay. um, so, yes, thank you very much. That was clearly all improvised, spur of the moment, noodling with a few somewhat premeditated and preconceived ideas, just to show some, hopefully innovative and interesting creative approaches and techniques, specifically with independence and applied independence and technique. Do you guys have any questions about anything I played or about my approach in general, concepts, timekeeping, technique, the music industry? Feel free to ask. I'm here to answer all and any questions. So
we also have a mic for anyone that needs to speak up also. So if you guys raise your hand, just there you go.
I can't see you actually. I don't know if we should,
we can turn on some lights.
Some of the room lights maybe.
What's up, Thomas? That was amazing. You took us around the world. I'm over here.
Oh, there. There you are.
I noticed you were doing a lot of Latin-inspired things.
Yes.
Fused, and you literally took us around the world. I guess could you just kind of expand on that, because you were doing some interesting stuff.
Thank you. I did, because Phil Metlorano is here, and Marcelo, and a lot of Latin drummers are here. So I worked in a lot of Afro-Cuban, African, and Latin inspired ideas, and used a lot of cowbell, of course, because you can. So, you can never have enough cowbell. So I use existing concepts and ideas, a lot of salsa, a lot of Brazilian, Afro-Cuban stuff, a lot of kind of samba ideas, and, as an example, and I try to kind of modify them and modernize them a little bit and apply them to the kit in an interesting way. So if I played, for example, a kind of a bayon type, like a salsa kick drum, or bayon like kick drum, like almost a soca beat. Let me put my cans down here 1 sec. So it's really a soca, something like that. Then I would layer with other Latin-inspired ideas, put a cascara on top of that, totally, grabbing random components from different styles and putting them all in a melting pot, and then adding new flavors and spices. Like, for example, I would use my left foot between that kind of soca thing, and then add some of those notes and play ghost notes. You feel that, it immediately has kind of an African vibe to it, And then if you put a cascara on top of that, things like that. And then you can all continue to orchestrate. And if I take an idea like that, I would maybe play a variation, on a repeat and add a bell, for example. And then I would maybe orchestrate the left foot as well. And all you have to do on top of something like this is just play a beat, and it's cool, So it's those kind of ideas, and I do this with a lot of. Thank you. I'll take a samba in a kick drum pattern, and I would play with my left foot maybe on a cowbell, which is perverse, but that's the fun. I'll take these weird components and I'll play, and then I'll play like a soca on top of that or something, like. mash that up somehow.
How are you tricking your mind, you know, to like not get lost in the sauce, essentially?
You know, this may all seem difficult, but as you know, drumming is ones and zeros. It's like a binary code. It's singles and doubles and combinations thereof, or strings of singles. You know, it's really nothing else. Occasionally there's a triple stroke in there or something. But it really is just a matter of conditioning yourself to be able to play, first of all, ambidextrously. Secondly, have foot technique ideally as good as your hand technique. And then it's, you know, by conditioning yourself and practicing all kinds of patterns, and there's a simple matrix that you go through. You condition yourself to be able to play any odd or even group on top of any other odd or even group. And it's a fairly simple process, starting with singles with the feet, doubles with the hands, singles with the feet, triples with the hand, singles with the feet, groups of 4, 5, 6, 9, etc. Then doubles with the feet, singles on top, doubles with the feet, doubles, plus inverted doubles. Then groups of 3, 4, 4. You know, I can play some of these if you want, but that way you really learn to play very freely in a non-linear fashion. And that's all it is. And then you can put certain components on autopilot.
That's
you know,
amazing.
and you can say, this is my ostinato with the right foot, that never changes. And with the other 3 limbs, I learned to play against that. You know, it's like Jim Chapin's, you know, jazz book on steroids. You know.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Oh,
Yes, please. Marcelo.
yo. Thomas, what kind of maintenance you have to do there? What do you do to keep the shape?
You know, that's a great question because I don't do this all the time, obviously. I do this for us, you know, drum nerds. And it does require a lot of maintenance. And I always, whenever I sit down to do these things that I used to practice a long time ago, you know, I realize, dang, you know, it does require maintenance and I'm really lacking, you know, I have to really shake off rust all the time. But I used to do a lot of practicing. And if you practice things correctly the first time around, they stick around. I mean, it's minor maintenance. It's more an intellectual effort, ironically, although I'm sweating balls here, but it's more of an intellectual effort than a physical one. There are certain things that are physically not easy to do, and you know they take it out of you after a while. Mainly, you know, obviously big moves on the drums, fast moves, and you know, double bass drum stuff. You know, if it's going on fast and loud for a long period of time, that requires real maintenance. You have to sit down every. I mean, how often do I get to do this? I used to do this every day, obviously when I was practicing growing up. Now I do it in situations like this, you know. However often that is, not often enough to keep it all in perfect shape. But I play all the time, not this stuff, but enough to maintain a decent level of comfort and control and command. And then occasionally, you know, I do the extreme things in clinics or masterclasses or whatever, or drum festivals and things. And when that happens, I sit down for a couple days prior, usually, or before a clinic tour or something, and kind of go through stuff. I would say if you are disciplined and you want to maintain a really high level of playing and command with this stuff, you probably need at least an hour a day, at least an hour of just maintenance practice, you know, which is very boring. And it's all physical stuff, you know. Like, especially like doubles with the feet, you know, they like if you do 6-stroke rolls. And if you do like bridging stuff, like for example, if I go, like say 5-stroke rolls as doubles, so closed 5-stroke rolls. So I go, you know, that move, you know, to play those kind of things clean, you have to sit down and do that, you know. But I would say an hour of intense, concentrated, focused maintenance practice, and you'll stay in decent shape.
Thank you. Can you describe just a little bit more the mental part of it that you were talking about?
Sure. So, you know, a lot of this stuff is technically not super advanced. You know, it doesn't require, you know, maintenance practice or anything. If I play a, you know, whatever, make stickings with the hands, you know. Stuff like that. It's more rudimental, you know. That doesn't require so much thinking. You know, once you've practiced these things and you've done it correctly the first time around, you never have to think about a double paradiddle or anything like that. I don't think about it, you know, when I play it. That takes zero intellectual effort. But layering rhythms and playing interdependent and independent patterns requires a lot of focus and concentration on micro-timing, on precision, obviously, and on superimpositions, layering of odd and even groupings, and knowing your cycles and how things overlap and where you come out, etc. So that's mainly intellectual effort. You know, if I play, as an example, if you play, you know, let's say a group of 3 with the feet, you know, this could be perceived as triplets, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. But this could also be 60 notes. This could also be 60 notes. 1, 2. Or I can count this as 10, 16, you know, and play groups of 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, you know? So those things require a lot of mental focus and sort of intellectual effort, because you have to know always where you are. You can't get lost in the superimposition. You have to always know where the, you know, the root meter is, how you superimpose, how things cycle, and you have to be very confident with that. And that is a very unusual and quite unnatural thinking process, because playing drums with the feet, first of all, is unnatural and weird, and then layering things on top of all that is weird, and not sort of a natural thing that you can do intuitively. It's a learned skill, and mostly intellectual, you know. So it's those kind of things that require, you have to be in that state of mind to play these things comfortably, and that requires sitting down with them and going through weird layers of rhythms and just thinking through them, you know, as you're playing them.
How do you approach like your foot technique, specifically your left foot as well? Like, do you prefer heel down, heel up, or do you go back in between, or just more detail about your foot technique?
I use 3 techniques mainly and combinations of those. So I use heel up, regular heel up technique with both feet. I use a version of heel up that's called stomping, where the beater comes off the drum. It's softer but has more low end, looks like this. So this is basically flat-footed stomping. The heel and the ball of the foot land at the same time on the pedal at an angle parallel to the footboard. And that's heel up. This alone allows you to play dynamically. And I'm a big fan of playing dynamically, all the drums, in particular the largest drum on the drum set, which is the kick drum. You know, most drummers play kick drum just brutally loud all the time, which is cool for certain things, but I like to go. It's like playing a hi-hat. You know, it's dynamic. And without dynamics, drumming is really lame, mostly. because you can't identify what's going on, because dynamics or accents usually imply a sequence or a cycle. You know, if I play just this with no dynamics, nobody knows what this is. This could be triplets. By playing accents, I imply a meter and so on. Or if I play the same rhythm and then go, you know, okay, these are now 60 notes. So dynamics have a huge effect. If everything's always loud. If I play the same thing but with dynamics. You know, it's a different effect and expression. And that is important for the kick drum for me. And in order to play, sorry, long-winded answer, but in order to play the kick drum dynamically, you have to employ different techniques. In particular, those three: heel down, heel up in the two ways, flat-footed stomping and heel up on the ball of the foot, and ankle strokes. And I combine these techniques. So, for example, I will play, you know, when I play crescendos, I go from heel down to heel up, you know. And if I play, for example, you know, it's going from here I put more weight into the pedal. Or if I play accented patterns, I would combine heel up with heel down playing. If I play a paradiddle, it would be heel up, stomp, heel down, heel down, heel down, and then heel up left, right, soft, left, left, soft. So. Or if I play a double paradiddle, it would be heel up, heel down, heel up, heel down, you know? You know, so in order to play these dynamic patterns, I employ all techniques all the time. So I have no preferred technique. I use them for particular reasons. Expression, you know, volume, dynamic changes. And sometimes I'll go and I'll work a lot with crescendos and decrescendos. You know, if I play a 5-stroke roll, it's a crescendo. You know, it starts heel down and ends heel up. But sometimes I want to play that all out. You know, I play all of them heel up. So I use it depending on what I want to say, you know, quote unquote. For example, if I play there, I want a crescendo. If I play, it would all be loud, you know? So, again, and sometimes I would go, you know, just play mixed sticking accent patterns, you know? And again, I always combine, and also because different pedals and instruments have different responses, I can't do the same thing on the crasher. You know, I have to use combinations of techniques to make certain things work on certain instruments. If I wanted to play like double strokes on the crasher, the beater dies after it. There's no rebound, you know? Because it's two pieces of metal kind of clanking against each other. So you have to really work that hard. Or on the cowbell, you know? You know, that's weird. It feels weird. So you have to muscle certain things out. So a bit of everything. Bit of, you know, premeditated combinations of techniques in order to play dynamic patterns. And occasionally just sweating balls and muscling things out to make stuff work, you know.
How would you suggest like working up your left foot specifically, like your
To
weak
work
foot?
on your left foot power and everything. So you have to learn to play multiple strokes. That's really important. And play them fast. In succession, play them precisely so they fit between the right foot, ideally, comfortably. And some of the best prepping or strength building exercises for the left foot are left foot doubles, in particular the left foot shuffle. So, because the shuffle, do you know what the Stone Killer #2 is? Stone Killer, Lawrence Stone, like Joe Morella's book. Okay, there's an exercise in Joe Morella's book, there's exercise that inspired by Lawrence Stone, who wrote Stick Control. And these exercises are called Stone Killer exercises. So you play a string of notes and accent the last one. So if you play 4, you do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Or 3. These are fantastic power building exercises, also for the hands. And Stone Killer #2 is this. 3, 4. Okay, and you have to practice those. You'll see what it is huge. I honestly think that's like the best drumming exercise, Stone Killer exercises. Because it's easy to play an accent followed by soft strokes, but the reverse is difficult, you know? So, and I do that with the feet. So you play 1 E and 2 E, like if you play double strokes. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So you always accent the second stroke. And doing that in a triplet feel is a good foot in the door, pardon the pun, with left foot strength training. Because it is effectively a Stone Killer exercise, especially when you play it on the hi-hat. So you play a splash, which is an ankle stroke, and a heel up stroke or stomp. Which means you have to put weight on the second stroke because you want to close the hi-hat. It forces you to put a lot of oomph and beef on that second stroke. So a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3. You know, so that is a killer left foot exercise. And then, you know, there's great ways of doing this. If you just play a regular shuffle, you know, or 4-limb shuffle, all 4 limbs. Or you could do groups of 3. You know, like 1, 2, 3, 1, splash, close. And start on the one with the kick drum. Or go 1, 2, 3, 4, and play the hi-hat and the kick drum in the middle. Or you can do a halftime shuffle. 3. Etc. So great, and you'll realize after a few minutes that this is really hardcore, and your tibialis anterior will be like, you know, burning. So that's a great one, and then other groups of 3. You know, like just a left foot right pattern, also on the hi-hat. Groups of 3, not 2, but. There you have 2 soft strokes, 2 splashes, and 1 weighty stroke. You know, especially in your hi-hat, which is sluggish and big and, you know, messy. It's very difficult to control. So for left foot workout, that would be it for me. That's my go-to, also to warm up and to, you know, wake the left foot up if I haven't used it for a while. Better than the kick drum pedal because that has a rebound, you know? That feels a lot more natural, you know? this, you have to really muscle that, and that's great left foot training. And then all the rudimental patterns. Anything you can think of that's rudimental that involves both feet, because you want to work on balance and right and left foot lead, just with the hands. So all the odd and even stroke patterns, open roughs, closed roughs, so you would go, for example, a left foot rough. Left foot rough, right foot rough, the reverse. So you go, or, left, left, right, left, left, right. Or right, right, left. And then open roughs, right, left, right, left, right, left. Very symmetrical exercises. Four-stroke rolls, all symmetrical. Right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right. Or right, right, left, 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 right, right. So here would be. Or starting with the left foot. Or five-stroke rolls, open and closed. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Or closed five-stroke rolls. Right, left, 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 right, right, left, right, right, left, left, right, all symmetrical. So. Six-stroke rolls. Right, left, right, right, left, left, right, left. Or open six-stroke rolls. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Or seven-stroke rolls. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Right, left, right, left. Nine-stroke rolls, blah, blah, blah. All those exercises and all the mixed stickings, that really works the left foot because they're, again, symmetrical and you have enough break, when the right foot is playing to let the left foot rest. Paradiddles, double paradiddle diddles, Or, all the rudimental stuff. Flams, flam triplets, flam accused. All your hetas. And heta fives. Heta seven. All the stuff. And then long strings of notes, that works both feet, but of course the new foot to the game, anything that's like long strings of 6-note triplets, 30-second notes, Great exercises. Like a blast beat, so singles 30 seconds with the hands, 60 notes with the feet. And then reverse it, 30-second notes with the hands, with the feet, 60 notes with the hands. So it would be, and then the feet, while the hands are doing 30-second notes, they would be 60 notes, like. almost like a blast beat and like a thrash beat. Blast beat. Things like that. Just maintenance, practice, building speed. Yeah, and that should work for the left foot.
Any questions?
Yeah, back there.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much again for coming and giving us all of this information. It's very informative. Informative information. My question was, what's going on in your mind for you did a 24-minute drum solo right now, or like back an hour ago, and I'm thinking, what are you thinking of it like? Rudimentally, or are you thinking, melodically, or what's your approach to doing something for so long? Do you try and squeeze out as much as like an ostinato as you can, or what's your thought process going through something for so long like that?
I try to be in a state of flow, and I think more compositionally, and in terms of energy and dynamics. And when I say compositionally, I mean classical concepts of composition, variation, orchestration, mirror images, counterpoint, ostinatos, layers of rhythms. I think about compositional ideas, and yes, those involve a lot of pseudo-melodic concepts. As you know, the drums are not a melodic instrument. This is in the category of rattlers and noisemakers. So we can play melodically. We can only resort to two of the four pillars of music, rhythm and dynamics. We can't play melodically or harmonically on the drums, but I try to simulate sort of melodic ideas by using pitches, low tone, like a low note, high note, and I work with dynamics and rhythms mainly. So I try not to be too melodic or pseudo-melodic, because it sounds a little bit ridiculous on a drum set, but I try to imply certain melodic ideas and low and high pitches in order to support a rhythmic idea, or in order to play variations. I orchestrate things differently, and in a situation like this, occasionally I will bust out some ideas that I think drummers find cool. That's part of it too, and that depends on my daily, state of mind, and if I can think of something, I try to improvise as much as possible. Let's put it that way. And sometimes during improvisation, I discover something, and then I try to develop it. So if I just sit down and go, I'll just noodle around. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I may just. I just get hooked on one thing. That's it. That's my pattern. And now it's here. Now it's there. It's an ostinato suddenly, and something happens, and I'll just let it go, and see what happens. So I try to develop an idea and work with it, turn it around, flip it around, double time, half time, triple time, orchestrate it, see where it takes me. And once I get bored with it, discard, move on, erase and replace, and try something new. And I try to keep it at a level energetically that's kind of enjoyable both for me and for the listener. I try to work in dynamics, a little bit of tension and release, and contrast. So that's the approach. Yeah.
I saw his hand. Sorry.
First of all, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. We all do. I wanted to ask, what are some habits or things you maintain outside of drumming that you believe have like a positive impact on your drumming?
What outside of drumming?
Like things you do in your daily life or just your
That
activities
positively affect my drumming?
Yes.
Well, I'm a music producer, so I write and produce music, and I work with music all the time as a producer, as a writer. So I think that helps my playing for sure. I play other instruments too. That helps with all of it, with producing music, with writing, with playing drums. And if you mean in particular like inspiration, then it's all kinds of things. It could be a cool movie, it could be a piece of art, it could be a conversation with someone. All that filters through into my playing, my ideas. Also listening to other players, of course, taking inspiration from them. All those things have a positive effect on my playing. And practicing, of course, but that's not outside of drumming. Outside of drumming, I think it would mainly be writing and producing music and playing with other musicians a lot and putting all this in context. But again, that's also drumming in itself. I don't think there's much other than that. You know, everything I do outside of music is to get away from music and from drumming, you know, which is beneficial. You know, that keeps my mind fresh and keeps me interested and focused on playing and drumming in particular when I do it. I think there's a really sort of massive disconnect between me working or playing music and everything else I do personally away from music. There's really, I try to also keep that very, very separate. You know, I don't really think about playing when I'm not playing or not working or involved with writing or whatever. I try not to, you know. And if I think about music, then it's not about drumming. That's for sure, you know. It's usually about writing a song or something's floating around my head. But it's not really like a cool beat or anything, you know. So, I don't know. Yeah. You're welcome.
A question over here.
Yes.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi.
How do you stay out of overuse injuries? Have you ever had one? Have you had to nurse through one?
Yes, I have had several. You know, not only like I've had carpal tunnel syndrome and decompression surgery on both hands, and you know, my technique is actually not bad. You know, I have pretty good technique, and always have had and practice technique a lot to avoid injury. But you know, it's not just the fact that I've been playing forever, but also a genetic predisposition to having carpal tunnel. You know, it's just something that happened. I had surgery, and now it's fine, both hands. I had trigger finger release surgery on one hand as a result of the carpal tunnel because I couldn't feel the sticks anymore. I was squeezing too hard. That caused, you know, trigger finger. Other than that, no issues really. It was just that. I mean, I had like tendonitis, you know, when I was 15 because I was practicing too much with the wrong technique. Minor things like that. And now, after the surgery, this was already almost 10 years ago, the surgery. And it was bad. It was really bad. I had no sensation in my hands, and I would cut myself all the time, burn myself and not feel a thing. And it became very dangerous. So after the surgery, it was perfect. It completely went away. I've had no issues since. I don't really warm up or anything when I play, which maybe that's the reason why I had it in the first place. I don't know. I don't really think so. It never, you know, I think warming up is a little, for me personally, it doesn't do much for me. If I sit in the dressing room, go digga 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 on a pad, you know, it doesn't do much. But I've had no other issues. No, I mean every once in a while you're sore, you have blisters or something, you know, if it's too moist or too hot. And I protect my hearing, you know. So no other issues. Knock on wood, you know. So far, so good. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Question right over here. How many pedals do you have, and how do you use them? Like orchestrate between them, or go back and forth, or overlap, or whatever you're doing.
Okay, so today I have 6, and sometimes I have more, and sometimes I only have like 2. But I like to use a lot of pedals, especially in situations like this. And so from left to right, I have a single. All these pedals are MCD pedals, DW, MCD. I'm a DW endorser. You know, I just use the Yamaha kit that's here today. But all the pedals are DW, and from the MCD chain drive series. So these are all chain drive pedals, except for the hi-hats. I have 2 hi-hat stands, straight hi-hat stands. This hi-hat is a bell hat, but it's just a regular hi-hat stand, straight stand that's mounted on the kick drum. So I have, and these 2 hi-hats are direct drive hi-hats. You know? And they're just 2 regular hi-hat stands. The far left is a single chain pedal on a cowbell. Then I use a single chain pedal on a crasher. This is called a crasher. Meinl makes this thing, that kind of metallic sound. Then I have a hi-hat stand here. Then I have my left slave kick drum pedal, my right kick drum pedal, and the right hi-hat. And I like to use these pedals, obviously, you know, in the conventional way, you know, play beats, kick drum, you know, all the open the hi-hat, you know, etc. But I also like to sort of employ foot or pedal operated instruments as part of my groove design and play a lot of multi-pedal orchestrations. So if you look at the top of the kit, you know, and if you play a paradiddle, you can orchestrate that. That's still a paradiddle, or it's still all paradiddles, or you can go. Or you can go. It's all the same paradiddle. You can do the same thing with the feet. You can take a paradiddle, and you can play it on 2 instruments. And that sounds cool already. It's very simple. I take the same ideas and concepts that we have been using for a long time on the top of the kit and apply them to the bottom of the kit. Same ideas of, you know, multi-instrument orchestration using mixed sticking patterns. And then combining sounds, sometimes bridging pedals, or, you know, I like that messy metallic sound in combination with the kick drum. You know, it's a great effect if you've got. Just bridging 2 pedals, you know, every other time is a cool effect. You know, it's interesting, and every once in a while, I just want to have a different combination of sounds, also with my feet. You know, just like I would go play a cymbal and a floor tom, you know, to play a kick drum and hi-hat at the same time as an effect musically. If I go, you know, there's another level of orchestration and instrumentation there, and another level of dynamics and sound. So that's how I use them, and I take any kind of pattern, combination, mixed sticking patterns, layers, unison strokes, and put them on different pedals, You don't hear that much. If you play two, pedals in unison. That's kind of weird, but it's a cool effect. It's a cool sound. And then, of course, all the alternating patterns, any mix sticking. I try to orchestrate these patterns based on a lot of rudimental ideas. If I play like a double paradiddle. That sounds great. Or a paradiddle or inverted paradiddle. 3, 4. Or any other mixed sticking, groups of 5, Or a 7 or 9 or 3. So you have you can also take on the role of a percussionist in a way at the same time. If you do that, you play more layers of rhythms and more interwoven patterns. I like to play a lot of linear things between hands and feet to replace a hand, for example. So instead of going, I would go. That frees up my left hand to go. So I don't have to do this. I can do this. And my left hand is completely free. So then I can think more about layers, and I like to play little things between my right hand and my right foot, which would be the left foot. Starting like this, like linear things. And then I work in little rolls. So little 5-stroke rolls. Or, open, that's a double now. Or, Or like 30-second note rolls. Or, etc. So little hints of interwoven patterns, layers of patterns. That's how I like to use them.
I actually had a question over here. Sorry.
Please.
I see that your double bass pedal is tight, man. It's super tight. I'm sure you've been asked this before, but what are your influences? But what are your metal drummer influences? Had any?
Who I grew up listening to, Tommy Aldridge. Like for metal, for double bass.
I mean, it could be like old, modern, or like anyone.
Well, at the time, who did I listen to a lot? For double bass, Cobham was a big influence. In the early days, yes, Tommy Aldridge. Who else was I into? John Heisman.
Okay.
He's a great British drummer. I don't know if you know him. Terry Bozzio with Zappa. And then, who else did I get into early? And then he was already, Cobham. You know, I got into double bass drum playing in a really weird way. Do you want to know how? So I ordered a practice kit from a music store. I grew up in Vienna, in Austria. And I ordered this Remo pad kit, practice pad kit. It was mounted on a black metal frame. And those pads, I don't know if you remember them, they don't make them anymore. They were kind of gray, and you could actually tune them. They had a regular drum head on them, and they're quite loud, obnoxious. But I wanted to have a practice kit, and the thing took forever to arrive. And then as it arrived, 2 of the pads were broken. And, you know, the guy at the store said, well, you know, I'll have to wait another 6 months for the other 2 pads to arrive from America. Okay, great. But you know what? I just remembered there was a guy here, he ordered the same kit a couple of months ago, and 2 of the pads were broken too on his. So it's in the back of the store. You know what? I'll just give you that guy's, you know, 2 remaining pads, and you put those on yours, and you have a whole thing. I'm like, okay, sounds great. So he gave me the frame too. The frame with the 2 remaining pads, and I had my frame with 2 pads, so I had 4 on top, you know, snare, 2, 3 toms. And I had now 2 frames, and the frame had a kick drum pad on it too. So now I suddenly had 1 complete drum set with a kick drum pad, and then this other frame with a kick drum pad. And I was practicing on that for a while, and looking at this empty left kick drum pad, I'm like, that's a shame. I would love to use that too. I have it, you know, may as well. But I only had 1 pedal, so after whatever, a year or so, I bugged my parents, and they bought me another pedal. And that's how I got into double bass drum playing. I'd seen pictures of drummers with 2 bass drums before, but I wasn't really listening so much to double bass drum music. And only after I started playing on that practice kit with the second kick drum pedal, I kind of got into it. I was playing already a little bit, and I asked my teachers, like, what should I do with the left thing? And he was a classical guy. He had no clue. So he said, well, same thing you do with the right foot. And what should I practice? Well, same thing you practice with your right foot, I guess. You know? So I started doing the same thing. You know, just all, you know, left foot lead. And then, you know, switching back and forth and so on. And that's how I got into it. More, you know, from that angle than from listening to other players. And then I realized, oh, Billy Cobham, he's got 3 kick drums, or 4 sometimes. That's cool. You know, and I started listening to him, you know, Quadrant 4 and all those, you know, double bass shuffle things, and then, yeah, Tommy Aldridge was the one who inspired me to get into kind of linear chops, using a lot of double kick drum as a real metal guy, you know. He was the first one I heard play. Or, you know, 4 and 2. And 3 and 3. And then 2 and 4. And, you know, all those kind of combinations. Groups of 3. You know, and all the linear combinations in 6 tuplets or 30-second notes. That's how I then got into it through Tommy Aldridge. And then I heard other players. I'm trying to think who were big. You know, there was a guy called Joe Franco. He had a double bass drum book. I don't know if he was a teacher. He had a book and a CD or something. That was interesting for me because it was all about syncopated kick drum patterns. It was all about playing 16th notes with the feet and leaving out notes, you know. It's basically doing this. Continuous 16 notes, and then you leave out a right hand, you know, and you end up with these syncopations. And that with the feet. So you start basically by going. I'll play it on the hi-hat so you can see it too. those kind of syncopated beats. And that got me into that. And then I realized that many people weren't really doing that, you know, and it was a new and interesting thing, especially those kind of syncopated beats. And then using mixed stickings, that was kind of my own idea to not just play alternating singles, but to work in doubles and mixed note rates, you know, and go. Yeah, those kind of things. Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Question right over here.
Hey, Thomas.
Hello.
Thank you so much for sharing the endless wisdom for several lifetimes.
My
question is on your Dream Theater audition. When you got the call for that, how much time you had to prepare until the day of, and of course there's other things in the middle you were doing. Just that total curiosity, if you don't mind sharing some of that.
Yeah, I was on tour in South America when I got the call, and that was probably about 3 weeks prior to the actual audition. So that was the first call, but that wasn't confirmed as like, you know, are you interested, blah, blah, blah. And then it took a few days. So to actually, before the actual audition, maybe it was 2 weeks. But I was on tour with Paulina Rubio in South America at the time, and I didn't have a kit to practice on or anything, you know, and I had like a 4-piece kit on stage with Paulina, and no time to rehearse the songs. So I learned the songs in hotel rooms and on pillows and beds in hotel rooms. I called Mike Portnoy. I said, hey, Mike, do you have any charts for any of this stuff? And he pointed me and he sent me some stuff. I'm like, that's made it a lot easier because I didn't have time to just sit there and memorize everything. I wanted to read it, and then I learn music very quickly when I just look at the chart. I can memorize that. I have a very sort of audio-visual memory. So that was helpful. And then I played the songs for the first time at the audition. Because after the audition, I had to go to Tokyo the day after. And I had 1 day only between the end of the tour with Paulina and the next tour that started in Japan. So I had about a week to learn the songs, I would say. And then I had the audition. So the first time I played them was at the audition. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
Hi. Thank you for coming out here. I know we all appreciate it, as Charlie said.
Thank you.
I was, funny enough, I discovered who you were through those Dream Theater audition videos on YouTube. And my question was basically about the metal side of the music industry. Like, how does a drummer start to, you know, get a foot in the door in that sort of industry, and like, what are things that drummers have in common that are like getting hired for those kind of gigs? And
You mean like Dream Theater or something like that?
yeah, just anything in that metal world.
You know, that's a very interesting question. The metal world is a very particular beast. The metal world is very low budget in general, except for a few, as you know, very successful bands. I mean, there's the big four, and there's Rammstein, you know, and then there's nothing for a long time. And then there's the scene that has no money in it, you know. It's terrible, unfortunately, you know. I like all kinds of music, including metal. I play everything. My taste is very eclectic. I love great metal. I love great jazz. I love it all. It's cool. As a professional musician, I avoid working in certain scenes because there's no money in it, you know. So that's why it's difficult for me to answer that question, because I've done I do a lot of metal records, a lot. You know, I record an average of 10 to 15 albums a month, you know, as a session musician. I have my own studio, people send me files. A lot of it is progressive metal, and heavy music in general. And there's how do you get your foot in the door? you you need to find musicians who are like-minded, who are totally into what you're into, and you need to slug it out and get out there and promote the heck out of your band and go on the road and perform and play and be amazing, and do it the old way. You know, I mean, of course you can use social media and all that and make your own websites and hey, great, but you have to go out and play and be awesome and not sound like everybody else, because there's such a giant swamp and ocean of metal bands that all sound the same, that are so boring. There's hardly anything new out there, especially in the world of metal. It's also become strangely competitive in the speed metal, thrash metal world, which is really totally besides the point, I think. And in metal drumming, it's become so much focused on speed, which is very boring, I think, because it's not difficult. You know, it's not difficult, there's no challenge in that, and there are no patterns in that. There's no rhythm, really. It's a drone, and that, I understand that's the effect, but try to be maybe not like everybody else, you know? That is my advice, to do something that's just left field, also in the world of metal, you know? Of course you have to, no, you don't need any cliches, really. Just be different, you know? Be heavy and be dark and be aggressive, but don't take all your inspiration from where everybody else takes the inspiration from. And I think that's always in all styles of music what makes artists and bands interesting, when they're left field and weird and quirky and unusual and unorthodox and not like everybody else, you know? And that's why some of the greatest metal bands are still around today. They've been around forever because they were different then, and they have their own style and sound, and they're like true to that. I mean, listen to AC/DC. If they make a record today, it sounds like Back in Black. It's the same thing, you know. That's their thing. And same with Metallica, you know, or whatever, Anthrax, you know. They found their thing, or Pantera, you know, like the whole groove metal thing. They found a new niche and established something new and interesting in that world, and had a very unique sort of background and influences. Now you listen to a lot of metal. I mean, I can't identify what's out there anymore. You know, it's a lot of it sounds the same. You know, and so my recommendation is work on your music. Focus on the music and on being interesting and captivating as a band or as an artist, and different than other artists and bands. Just try to set yourself apart a little bit and do something that maybe other bands think is lame, you know, but you have to like it, you know. There's no shame in having an actual vocalist, not just Cookie Monster, you know, and have actual, harmonic elements in metal is cool, you know, melodic elements, or not playing blast beats all the time. You know, that's almost like really unusual these days, you know, like hardcore metal. So that's what I would do, focus on the music and let the music speak for itself. And then, of course, you need to promote the heck out of the band, you know, which is cheap these days, or costs nothing. You can use social media and you can create all your stuff and do all the cool content and promote it yourself. It's a lot of work, but do that, you know. Find your own fans and supporters online. There's plenty of everything from Kickstarter to Indiegogo and to Patreon and all the other, you know it all. Find people who dig your stuff. And my recommendation is also, don't give it away for free, you know. If you want to make money with music, you have to know how to promote it and market your music, and you have to know that and understand that the music is the product. So don't give it away. Don't put it on frickin' Spotify. You know, it does nothing for you. There's no income in that, zero. Sell one CD for $20 and you make more than you make on Spotify in a year, you know. So you be smart about money and how to support your band. And you know, everybody says, but you know, if you're not on Spotify, the fans will never find you. That's such bullshit, you know, and that's such crap. You have your own, create your own platform, you know, and put your music out and approach people and market it and promote it. Don't, as soon as it's on Spotify or whatever, any streaming service, it'll never make money again. You know, that's the thing. So if you want to maintain a band and have a career and actually earn money and pay for records and for a van or whatever, then sell your music. That's your product. You know, it's not your electronic business card. Like, here's our band. There's the music. It's out there for free. You know the saying, what costs nothing is worth nothing? There it is. If there's no price tag on it, it's worthless. So my advice is focus on the music, find your scene, and what great way of doing that is still playing and performing live, you know? Build a little fan base, you know, and then cater to them. And find your supporters online, promote the crap out of the band, and never give away your music for free, you know? That's my advice. And then you stumble up the ladder doing that and doing that continuously. You know, people still, you remember Lars Ulrich, you know, with Napster? Remember that day? He was so right. Everyone like, oh, you're a rich superstar, man. You don't need the money. But he was so right. And he was the first one who stood up for every musician and said, hey, that's wrong. You know, you can't do this. And look where we are today, you know. He was right then and still is right. So take his advice too, you know, and try to put value in what you do. Also monetary value, you know. Remember that what you do has value. There needs to be a price ticket. And it's fair to charge for it. It's cool. Especially if what you do is interesting and different than what other people do. You set yourself apart not only with the music and creatively, but also with the way you run your business. You know, and the most successful bands out there today, like Rammstein, they control everything, you know. They don't have management. They hire people to manage them and pay them a salary, you know. They control everything. And many of the other big bands too. So they're good examples, I think.
Okay, we have one last question, Thomas.
Okay,
Thank you for
yes.
coming out, making the time, driving all that way on the 101. You basically covered, not to sound repetitious, but what would you say to these young up-and-coming drummers? Just your advice, just in a big, huge splash. What could they, you basically covered the business side and individuality of having a group and a sound. But what would you tell these young guys that just sit down in the practice room, and what would be your thing to give them and leave it here for them to take and create on their own? And thank you so much for coming out.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Well, my advice to all of you drummers, you know, for those times you spent in your practice room is learn to practice, because that's a learned skill as well. Practicing isn't something that everybody does naturally, correctly. You need to learn to practice. There's practice rules. There needs to be a practice logbook. There need to be goals. There need to be priorities. There needs to be a practice plan, and you have to focus on productivity, consistency, etc. So learn to practice correctly. I was very lucky when I started playing at 4. I had my first teacher at 5, and he taught me how to practice before he taught me how to play anything. Because at a 4-year-old, you have no idea what practicing means, of course. So that was incredible advice, and he taught me basic practice rules. He taught me about focus, about what practicing means versus playing, how to set goals and achieve goals, how to have a result-based practice routine, and that made a huge difference for me. Not only in practicing drums, practicing other instruments, or any other area of expertise where I wanted to get better. You have to learn to practice. It's not just sitting down and, okay, you know. It's not that. You have to always know where you are, what you're practicing, why you're practicing, how long you're going to be practicing, and you're not ending your routine or practice session until you get results. You know, that's really important. You need to get results every day. And if you have a result and goal-based approach to practicing and learning anything, you'll do just fine. And it'll have a massive impact on your life in general, also in regards to other things that you do. You need results. Don't just see what happens. You can create, results. You can provoke results. You can pursue them on a daily basis, and that makes all the difference. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Marcelo.
Thank you, Thomas. We really appreciate. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. See you next time.